musical rendition by Simcha Weber. We call upon Rabbi Chaim Axelrod, Capito Kuf Lamed.
Shir Amalos Mimamakim Kirosicha Adonai.
Shir Amalos Mimamakim Kirosicha Adonai.
Adonai Shema B'Koli Tianos Necha Kashuvos L'Kol Tachanunoi.
Adonai Shema B'Koli Tianos Necha Kashuvos L'Kol Tachanunoi.
Im Avonos Tishmoria Adonai Miyamor. Ki imcha aslicha leman tivarei. Ki visi Adonai kivsa nafshi v'ledvaro ochalti. Nafshi l'Adonai mishomrim laboker, shomrim laboker. Yachel Yisrael el Adonai, kim Adonai hachesed v'arbei mofidos. V'hu yiftes Yisrael mikol avonosov.
Called upon Rabbi Rappaport of the Rav Lido Beach Synagogue. Capito Hey Gimel.
Shir Mizmor Le'asaf Elohim Adom Loch Al Techer Rosh Ve'al Tishkoytei Ki Hinei Yevecho Yemoyin Mesanecho Nosuroish Al Amucho Yarimu Zoin Ve'yizvivatzu Al Sunecho Amru Lechu V'nachid Demikoy V'le'zofer Shem Yisrael Oin Ki no Yatzu Le'vyachda V'lecho B'ris Yichroiso Ole Dom Vishme'elim Moyoch Ve'hagrim Kvo Ve'amoy V'amoleik Pleshes Im Yoish V'tzoir Gam Ashur Nilvay Mama Yisrael Nilot Zelo Asay Lohem K'midyon Kesis Le'giyovin B'nachal Kishoin Nishmetu B'nedo Yaroyu Doimin Adoma Shisay Modin Ve'mikoyre V'chizem V'chze V'chuchzamun Kol Mesichei Asher Overun Shalonu Eis Ne'ois Elohim Eloi Hai Shisei B'kal Galgal Kekash Lifnei Ruach Ke'esh Tivario Al Chleo Vodnai Torim Kein Tirdefei B'sarech V'suvos Chodevalem Malei Fenem Koloi B'vakshu Shimcho Adonai Yevoi Sheviboalu Adiyad V'yachperu V'yevidu V'yedu ki ato Shimcho Adonai Levadecha Elyoin Al Kol Haaretz.
Call upon Simcha Weber.
Machnisei rachamim, hachnisu rachamim, lefenei barachamim, hachnisei tefila, hachnisu tefiloi seidu. Lifnei melech shoymei atvila machnisei tze'aka hachnisu tzakoseilu Lifnei melech shoymei atziyavaka machnisei dima Achnisu dimoy sayindu Lifnei melech misratze bidmois Oy oy yo yishtadlu v'harbu tchina v'harbu tchina u'v'kavavasha u'li yifnei melech keiram v'niso u'y melech keiram v'niso oy 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 yishtatlu v'harbu tchina v'harbu tchina u'v'kavavasha u'li yifnei melech keiram v'niso oy melech keiram v'niso Did-it-oy, oy, 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 oy. Did-it-oy, oy, 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 oy. Did-it-oy, oy, 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 oy. Did-it-oy, oy, 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 oy. Oy, 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 oy. Did-it-oy, 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 oy, 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 oy. Oy, 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 oy.
If I could be so bold, I would like to express on behalf of the 6 million Kedoshim the very wonderful turnout this evening this Yom Hashoah 5774. As we all know, Yom Hashoah v'Hagvura, the 27th day in Nisan, is always in very close proximity to our celebration of the Yontiv of Pesach. And I believe that there is one portion in the Haggadah which really typifies the situation that we find ourselves here remembering the Kedoshim and the Tahorim who sacrificed their lives al Kedushas Hashem. And that is Baruch HaMokem Baruch Hu Keneged Arba Bonim Dibra HaTorah. The 4 sons, which we are all so familiar with. And I think an analysis of the 4 sons will give us an insight, as I mentioned, to the situation today. Starting in reverse order is the son who is the She'eni Yodei Lisho, the son that does not know how to ask. And that is representative of the generation, the new generation, the very young children who are unaware of the atrocities, are unaware of the terrible, horrific events which took place to our people, to the Jewish people. She'eni Yodei Lisho, they simply don't know. And then there is the Tam, those who know, those who are aware, and they are simply disinterested. They simply do not relate and do not understand the implications, the ramifications of this horrible point in history which befell our people. And then there is the Russia. The Russia is the Holocaust deniers. Not so many decades ago, the world was filled with the smoke, with the ashes of Amenu, the people, our families, our beloved ones. Not so long ago in terms of the overall course of history. And yet there are Rishoyim who would deny that these events ever occurred. And finally, there are the Chachamim. Who are the Chachamim? We are the Chachamim. We who have gathered here tonight, we are the Chachamim. We are the wise ones. And it behooves us to review the entire story as the Baal Haggadah tells us, from beginning to end, to review and to tell and to share and to impose upon the Rishoyim of this world, upon those, the Tamim of the world, and those who are the She'eno Yodeya Lisho. Unfortunately, as you well know, our family suffered a tragic loss within this past year. And as a result, I've become more acutely aware of something that I've often said in the past, but it is more poignant at this time. We speak about 6 million Kedoshim. The words roll off our tongues. 6 million Kedoshim. 6 million. Can we fathom 6 million people? Can we have a picture in our mind as to what 6 million people, mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and grandparents and children and infants, can we have an appreciation of 6 million Kedoshim? And therefore I've always believed that the single story, the single episode, the single history leaves a greater impact, a more indelible impact, something that we can grasp, that we can identify with. And therefore, it is so important this evening to be fortunate to have as our speaker Rabbi Polak, who is a survivor, to speak to us and to give us a first-hand account of the ordeal in terms of his own personal survival as well as that which he witnessed firsthand. Before we have the pleasure, before we have the honor of hearing Rabbi Polak, I call upon David Samuels to play a flute presentation in honor of this solemn occasion. Rabbi Polak is a child survivor of the Westerbrück and Bergen-Belsen concentration camps. He lost his father and 30 members of his immediate family in the Holocaust. His writings have appeared in such distinguished magazines and newspapers as Commentary, Midstream, Tradition, and the Boston Globe, as well as in many books and scholarly journals, both Hebrew and English. He is the Av Bet-Din of the Bet-Din of Massachusetts. A memoir of the first 10 years of his life after the Holocaust, The Bells Still Ring, is forthcoming from Urim Publishers this summer. Without further ado, Rabbi Polak.
Poischin, Ichvoy Lasanya. I want to thank Rabbi Waxlach for a wonderful introduction. I was going to give the Dvar Torah because I don't want to give these Holocaust talks without some Torah. But I'm going to skip that part because we got some. So I'm grateful to you, and I have a little more time to do Magid. I come to speak for the children. 1.5 million children. A friend of mine who lives in Israel, a retired Jew, who was in the same places that I was, said, he's older than me, said that in Holland, all the Jews eventually had to move into a ghetto, and all the Jewish children went to ghetto schools. The ghetto schools were the best schools in Holland because it was taught by all the Jewish professors from all over Holland who had been fired from their positions. And every day, some kid in your class, or some 2 kids, were called to the principal's office. And were never seen again. My friend Shlomo said, here's what happened to me. I was called down to the principal's office, and there were police there. Not Germans, Dutch police. And the Dutch police, he said, took me to jail. City jail. And we had a family of 2 parents and 8 children. And he said, my mother and the girls were in one cell, and my father and the boys were in the next cell. And when I got there, somebody said, listen to Mommy. Mommy's teaching. And Mommy sat there and taught Nishmas Kol Chai Tevarech Hashemcha. She was completely not in the Holocaust. She was on fire, he said. And he has never said, obviously, Nishmas in the same way. Classes got smaller and smaller till there was nobody left. Closed the school, and people were sent in Holland, where I was, to Westerbork. Westerbork was the craziest spot on earth. There were no gas chambers. There was a beauty salon. There was a soccer team. They had a hospital with 1,000 beds, with the finest pharmacy and the best doctors who met every week for scientific conferences. Most amazing place. The most important thing about Westerbork, of which, by the way, I have no memories, I was just too young. Most important thing about Westerbork was that they took you from there east. And nobody knew what east was, except that it wasn't good. There was food in Westerbork. Nobody died. Except for two groups in Westerbork did die. The really old people. Old people didn't know what were they doing there. One lady was overheard saying, "Why am I here? Every day of my life, I washed the sidewalk in front of my house with a broom and with soap and water. Why am I here?" They died. Plenty of food. Me, wasn't luxury. There was a nightclub in Westerbork. And the other group that died were the children. Somehow, whatever nurturance they were supposed to get in Westerbork didn't take. In a camp of 2,000-3,000, kids died at the rate of 15 a week. It's a very high number. Nobody, with some exaggeration, stayed in Westerbork for more than a month or two, maximum. Usually could be a week or two, or 2 weeks, and you were sent away. Every Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock sharp, the train came, and you got on. And on Monday night, before that Tuesday morning, they came into the barracks and announced who was going to be on the train. There's a lot more to say about Westerbork. And I hope that when it finally comes out this summer, you'll buy the book and read the chapter on Westerbork. It won't be the same afterwards. But what I wanted to highlight in Westerbork is the children. The children didn't thrive there. And it wasn't just in Westerbork where they didn't thrive. And it's not just in Holland that the classes got smaller and smaller. I have in front of me a medical report from the Warsaw Ghetto, written in the 1950s by a survivor, a doctor, Dr. Shaul Shasha. They had incredible doctors, high-level doctors in the Warsaw Ghetto. People don't know this. And they did superb research in the ghetto. in the Warsaw Ghetto that is still used today. And what they studied, what could they Nabach study in the Warsaw Ghetto? They studied malnutrition. And they had a special study of malnutrition in children. I'd like to read you a summary of the article on malnutrition with children. The title of the paper is called Clinical Manifestations of Hunger Disease Among Children in the Ghettos During the Holocaust. It's 3 paragraphs. The summary. The harsh life in the ghettos was characterized by overcrowding, shortage of supplies, e.g. money, sanitation, medications, poor personal hygiene, inclement weather, and exhaustion. Under these conditions, morbidity, which means illness, was mainly due to infectious diseases, both endemic and epidemic outbreaks, with a high mortality rate. The dominant feature was hunger. Daily caloric allowance was 300 to 800 calories, and in extreme cases, i.e. the Warsaw Ghetto, it was only 200 calories. The food was lacking important nutrients, vitamins, trace elements, leading to massive clinical expressions, starvation, and death. The clinical manifestations of starvation were referred to as the hunger disease, which became the subject of research by the medical doctors in the ghettos, mainly in the Warsaw Ghetto, in which a thorough documentation and research were performed. The first victims of hunger were who? Children. First, they failed to thrive physically, and later mentally. Like their elders, they lost weight, but later growth stopped, and their development milestones were lost with the loss of curiosity and motivation to play. A friend of mine, no longer alive, was one of the liberators of Dachau. And he said he found some children in Dachau, and he went over to them, and he looked at them closely. They were 9 or 10 years old, and they were all gray. And he was a soldier, and he scrambled, he told me, to get like some dolls and toys, and he brought this to the kids. Kids didn't want it. And he said to them, "Willst nicht spielen? Don't want to play?" Kids said, "Nope." "Du musst leben, ihr musst leben. You have to live," he said to the kids. You know what the kids said to him? "Schon genug gelebt." Kids said to him, "We lived enough." And so we're back to this report. The mortality rate among babies and infants was 100%, as was described by the ghetto doctors. Quotes, listen to this. When the elder children got sick, the smaller ones were already dead. And here is the last sentence of this report. In the last weeks of the ghettos, there were no more children. After the Holocaust. After the Holocaust, I found myself, together with some 2,000 Jewish prisoners of the Third Reich, stranded in a village deep in East Germany. Our trip from Bergen-Belsen to Theresienstadt, interrupted by the good soldiers of Marshal Zhukov, who, after they had raped the local women and thrown the inhabitants out of their homes, told us that the village was ours and wished us well. We're talking April 1945. I wasn't yet 3 years old, and I remember very little of it. After the Holocaust, in this tranquil village upon a lake called Trovitz, my mother, who now weighed 50 pounds, was raving mad in her typhus-driven delirium. My father was so thin and exhausted that while the embers of life still stirred and rattled within him in this village of 700 well-meaning homeless Gentile souls, he had long ceased being a self-aware human being. In my mind, he ceased being altogether, so that now I have no memory of him whatsoever. After the Holocaust, a few days after the Russians took us off the train, a few days after the so-called liberation, deep in April, my father died in Trovitz, where he remains politely buried to this day in a mass grave next to the evangelical church. After the Holocaust, my father died 3 times, first in his mind, then in mother's, then in mine. He became a victim among victims, a name on a list with a cross next to it, a casualty of Hitler after Hitler was already dead, after the Holocaust. After the Holocaust, for 50 years until Perestroika, the sign above the 2 mass graves in the churchyard read, "Hier liegen unsere gefallenen Kameraden." Here lie our fallen comrades, the victims of the fascist tyranny. For 50 years he lay there, de-Judaized, the Holocaust pursuing him even after he was dead. 50 years he lay there, nameless, stateless, in a well-tended grave, with his only child, me, too terrified to return to that place, swathed as it was in an anesthetized white mist of horror. 50 years later, the new signs were erected in German and in Hebrew, stating the religion of the fallen comrades. Thank you, Mr. Gorbachev. You whose forebearer Zhukov saved me from Hitler, for returning in the realm of signs and signifiers, where meaning is most often recovered, for returning Judaism to my father, and for returning him to the Jewish people. After the Holocaust, was it June 1945, July, my father dead, my mother given up for dead, I found myself alone in the soaking night rain, waiting for a train. I was not yet 3 years old, and I do not remember anyone being with me. Pinned to my chest, a sign that I could not read, in Dutch and German, stating my name and nationality. I fought a black terror, I recall, with a shudder to this day. I screamed and wept so that my throat hurt. Who would take care of me? No answer after the Holocaust. After the Holocaust, Holland was in no hurry to welcome back its straggles of Jewish survivors. Some were placed behind barbed wire at the border and had their pitiable effects confiscated and never returned. Some were detained because they had no papers. They said, "Where's your passport?" Man, I was in Bergen-Belsen for the past. You ever been there? You know what that's about? You can't go into Holland unless you have your passport. Some were detained, they had no pay. Some because they were too young to know who they were. Lots of people like that. or who their parents had been, or whether their parents were alive. When the survivors were finally let in, they were advised that only 70% of their confiscated pre-war assets would be returned to them. After all, they were stored. Someone's got to pay the storage fee. Only a near rebellion of the Dutch judiciary resulted in all of it finally being returned to those who returned. 135,000 Jews lived in my town, The Hague. No, 135,000 Jews that lived in Holland before the war. 102,000 were murdered. Highest percentage of any country in Western Europe, including Poland. Germany, believe it or not, I'm using the word very advisedly, only lost 50%. Belgium, quote unquote, only lost 50%. The two big losers, where most of the Jews were decimated, were murdered, was Holland and Greece. And the governmental committees registered 3,500 displaced children in 1945. Most had been hidden. Many were orphans. Some, like me, returning from the camps. Some who had totally lost their identities, without names, with no known families. It was not a given, the Dutch Parliament decreed, that Jewish child survivors, it was not a given that Jewish child survivors would be returned to their parents, if they had any, or to the Jewish community if they didn't. In the end, 17% of these children remained adopted by Christian, presumably more suitable families after the Holocaust. Oh, the children, the children. I am riding breathlessly on the back of a scooter, my arms wrapped around the wonderful mail jacket in front of me, my head buried deep into it, one eye only taking in the colors, the sun. He and his wife had adopted me. I remember only his back. No face, no name. Gloriously we putter through Elysian fields of golden hay and summer greenery. Let this ride never end, I ask. It does. And we arrive at the Catholic hospital in Eindhoven. Gingerly he helps me down, fearful of my pallor, of my fragility. We are in a room. Everything is white. The ceilings are very high. There is a woman in the white bed with the white bars, surrounded by the whole Catholic Church, nuns, priests. There wasn't a lot of room and it was getting hot. Somebody signals me to greet her. Hello, madame, I say. The jacket that brought me this far says, she is not madame. She is your mother. After the Holocaust. My mother? My whole being rebelled at the word. My body shook. Somewhere inside, I screamed a cry so grief-struck, so thunderous that no one was left in the room, save for the woman in the white bed. I looked at her shattered form, her rheumatic, deformed legs, the Holocaust madness still in her eyes. My mother? Not, I screamed silently, not. Jacket had left. His warmth, his reassurance, puttering into a distance not meant for me. Can a child really want to die after the Holocaust? Joseph, she says. Joseph, yes, I am your mother. He doesn't seem to recognize you, the church says. It is possible that he isn't your child, isn't it? Children get lost, displaced, mix-ups are common. We really cannot let you keep this child unless we are sure he is yours. Whoever he is, you can be sure that the church will take very good care of him. She understood the stakes. She always did. That's how we survived. Joseph, she says, Joseph, come here. There is kindness in the horror of her form. I come. He doesn't recognize me, she says to the church, because the last time he saw me, I weighed 70 pounds less than I do now. Come, sit here, she says to me. We'll play a little. I want no part of her wretched, morbid form. I don't sit. I feel I'll vomit. I don't understand the church. She says to the church, there are too many people in this room. How can I reacquaint myself with my child in the middle of a theater? Can you all please leave? The church leaves, save for one or two, ostensibly the decision makers. She speaks to me with love, gently, gently. Do you remember, she says, how we used to read Little Red Riding Hood together? How I would read one line and you would finish the rhyme at the end of the next line? She tries it. I respond haltingly with the rhymes. Soon I cannot control them. They pour out, rhyme after rhyme, verse after verse. Thus did I sing that morning the poetry of Bergen-Belsen, of the corpses I played around, of the typhus feces that were my sandbox. Thus did I sing the song of the hunger and of the fever, of the cold that does not let up, of mother washing my body with her coffee rations. Thus did I sing then on the morrow of the Holocaust, of the rhymes of the angel of death. Thus did my song echo the rattle in father's chest as he reached up skyward to call out to his brothers long gone in Sobibor that he too was coming. The church leaves. There is a drawer in the white night table next to the white bed with the white bars. Open it, she says to me. Inside, a small mountain of foil-covered chocolates. Deep in the mountain, I rescue a small pair of tzitzis and a small, exquisite red sitter. What are they? I ask. You are a Jew, she says to me. And Jews need these things. Our first conversation after the Holocaust. And the children, Dawn. Mother and I are living in a home for hapless survivors. a beautiful townhouse in an elegant The Hague neighborhood. It is early 1946. There are photographs of me in this era on a tricycle, my hair carefully parted, a smile in my mouth, and a poker player look in my eyes. There are shopping expeditions to the Bijenkorf. Neither mother nor I can get enough of the gorgeous floral displays and merchandising on its massive ground floor. It is thinking about this floor, to her, what heaven was going to look like, she later told me, that helped her beat the latrine called Bergen-Belsen. There is sunshine in The Hague, there is warm clothing, and then there are the nights. I share a bed with mother, its linen starched and rough against my skin. I move as far away from her as I can, touching the edge of the bed. It is difficult to get warm. With some regularity, around 3 a.m., her screams that the police are coming terrify me so that my heart slams in its cage and I sweat the sweat of death itself. I do not know how to manage her madness. I am unprotected. My daytime naps in this bed are an orgy of my own shrieking and crying. My pillowcase is forever wet. My pale skin develops rashes. I am perfectly toilet trained after the Holocaust. Before the war, there were 35,000 Jews in The Hague. As they were systematically being deported to Westerbork, the three lay leaders of the Orthodox Kehillah, Mr. Zadoks, Mr. Levison, and Mr. Drielsman, pledged that if they were given the privilege of surviving whatever lay before them, then when all this was over and the community regathered itself, then they would organize the Kehillah anew. By some miracle, the three did survive and meant to make good their pledge. They waited and waited then for their tarrying brothers and sisters to return, which they didn't. Fewer than 1,000 of the 35,000 survived. Only then did they see the enormity of the Holocaust. Only then did they grasp with pounding hearts the terror of its sweep. After the Holocaust in 1946, the Jewish Home for Survivors in The Hague sold its chametz. I have the shtar of that year. You need to understand, the Jews came back and the Torah moved on. The Torah continued. They were not going to let Hitler tell them what kind of a Jew to be or how to be a Jew. The Jews gathered at the table for my first Seder, battered, limping, palsied, unreal, snuffling without joy, barely looking at each other. We sang Dayenu that year. That was the year I learned the melody. They sang Dayenu that year. These Jews who in Westerbork had witnessed the hospital being emptied and its patients being put on trains to Auschwitz, thereby putting to bed any illusion that Auschwitz was a labor camp. These self-same Jews who with the arrival of a new train every Tuesday morning heard the death knell toll for them, these Jews sang, "If you had taken care of us in the wilderness, Almighty God, had not provided us with the manna, Dayenu." That would have been enough. They sang Dayenu that year, these Jews who had their children snatched screaming from their hands in Westerbork and tossed onto the train to Sobibor. These self-same Jews who waved to their children as the train pulled out of the camp, a train no one in heaven nor upon the earth saw fit to stop. These Jews sang, "If you had given us the manna, Almighty God, and not given us the holy Shabbos, Dayenu," that would have been enough. They sang Dayenu that year. These Jews who had witnessed the departure of the last train that was to leave Westerbork for the east, a train filled with the unbekannte Kinder, the unknown children, the ones whose parents had preceded them on the trains to the gases and the shootings and the burnings, the children who had forgotten their names, who were inarticulate, who were pre-articulate, who held each other's hands, the terror in their eyes, these self-same Jews who screamed and never again slept through the night for having seen those children's eyes. These Jews sang, "If you had given us the holy Shabbos, Almighty God, and had not given us the Torah, Dayenu," that would have been enough. They wept through Dayenu that year after the Holocaust. Imagine it, the end of an era. The last person able to testify to all that transpired, to all that befell us. The last person who could affirm that we indeed saw what we saw is gone. Of all the rememberers, I alone am left to sit here, knowing that my time will also come, and then what becomes of the tale? I am limited in what I remember. I was not yet 3 when the war ended. What value is there in the few horrific scenes I can conjure? The historical record is not enriched by them. My memory has become a datum, a relic, valid, but inessential. While they still lived, I stood among the other survivors, seasoned, wizened men and women who were perpetually old, perpetually gone. Their bodies reflected those days. The deep shadows of what they had once taken in never left them. They would glance at me in passing and surveying my inconsequentiality, often with patience, often without. I was a fly. Do you really know, child, they would ask? Do you really know what it is to have your parents shot before your eyes? Do you really know what it is to have your grandparents thrown out of the upstairs window during the liquidation? Did I know? I would put my hands in my pocket and shrug, looking in those days for a cigarette. Did I know? The question was an accusation. You do not understand, they were saying. You were too young to make sense of it. The carnage and death, the murder by fever and by hunger, all of which I witnessed, some of which I experienced, they were not valid, those things, to them, because I could not have made sense of such experiences while they occurred. My testimony was that of a blind man. I heard the noises, put it all together later. Not acceptable in a court of law, not sufficiently real. You say you were there, they argued, but you really weren't. Then they would appear astonished at the pain that came over my face from such invalidation, and would hastily take pity. Bis gewena jingele, they would say. It's not your fault, you were just a kid. Children, they meant, are frivolous. Let's not take their experiences seriously. They are all gone now. Their hoary heads and Polish teeth have crossed the great divide, and I alone am left to tell the tale. I'm a bit of a fake, don't you think? A bit of a liar, no? When those memories I did possess would beckon, I trembled. Sleepless nights would become my lot, filled with chills and despair. They were without solace, without consolation. I would not allow love. Love promised that what little memory I did have would be submerged. Love meant the cesspool that was Bergen-Belsen would disappear. When I was 10 years old, my father murdered. My mother married a man in Montreal who forbade mention of the Holocaust. Shall we let it disappear, I wondered? And if we did, would I continue being? I lived with him, but did not take up with him. I could not remember what brought on my nocturnal fits of madness. There were no visual scenes in my imagination when primordial terrors racked my body. I could not remember why I would periodically get mammoth rheumatic tremors that seized me in the darkness and in the light. I did not remember why mother's moans of terror shuddered within me decades after she died. I knew that I was afraid of her, not for what she had been, but for what she had become. I knew that I did not want to have the toughness in her that allowed her to survive. Yet did it enter me, yet does it overtake me. It turns people away when they sense it. I am not easy to love. For all that, I did not visit my past really, never gave it a glance, believe it or not, until I turned 50. Slowly, I stared at my past. Slowly, with index cards, I put it into chronological order. The Hague, Westerbork, Bergen-Belsen, The Hague. Soon after the end of the Holocaust, in Montreal, I fell in with other child survivors. They made up fully a third of my 7th grade class. We were silent about our past. When the topic came up, we would become restless and look about anxiously for distraction. We did not want to be witnesses. We just wanted to be like everyone else. Eventually, we each became an anti-witness. We didn't want to hear about it, talk about it. We pretended that the ordeal happened to others, to those who did have numbers on their arms. Perhaps we understood that the mature survivors constituted the most humiliated group of people on earth, and we wanted no part of their residual shame. Mother died when I turned 40. Freddie, a tad older than I, came to sit with me at her shiva. Do you remember, Joseph, he said, do you remember how we used to play hide and seek around the corpses in Bergen-Belsen? I did not remember. But it was this question coming from him that allowed me to accept myself as a survivor. And it has taken nearly 3 decades following that shiva for me to have learned that what my mind does not remember, my body does, and so does my soul. Hesitantly, I take my place among the survivors. I get into line at the gates of the death camps, and I am there more in death than in life. And so I sometimes entertain this fantasy that because of my sheer youth during those years, I am the last witness. The Holocaust will pass out of our experience and into history. There will be no one left to say, and they took my parents away and I never saw them again. Or, Moishala died in my arms. He had not eaten anything in 2 weeks and his 9-year-old frame could not take it anymore. Or, my high school teacher examined all the boys in the class and all the circumcised ones were expelled. I carry this fear that when I disappear, so will the last memories of that great darkness. So will the fecal stench that attended the typhus. So will the ravages of the outdoors that attended the roll calls and the stiffness everywhere of the corpses. And in the absence of such primary memories, how long will it take for a civilized country again to allow a leader into office who harbors evil beliefs and insidious desires? And how long until the physicians and lawyers and judges and philosophers and writers and musicians and composers and conductors join this cause? I wonder if I indeed turn out to be the last witness. Will my death mark the beginning of the great forgetting? At such moments, fortunately, I have also come to realize the arrogance of such questions, and to understand that such arrogance is where idolatry and atheism begin. For I will not be the last witness. The last witness will be the greatest, the most humiliated witness of all. I speak, of course, of God himself. He who is everywhere, Melo Chol Haaretz Kavodo, had to have been there too. He had to have been present, and he had to have witnessed his reputation as Redeemer and Savior of Israel sink into the mud of Treblinka and Belzec. What will the Egyptians say, Moses asks, when God threatens to destroy Israel after they worship the golden calf? Do you want them to say that you took the Jews out of Egypt only so that you might destroy them yourself when they reached the desert? The argument worked. He was averse to being misconstrued. There is a scene in the great Hochut play, The Deputy, in which a priest asks the character Hochut, based on that Hochut based on Joseph Mengele. He asks him something along the lines of, the priest asks Mengele, have you no fear of divine retribution? Do you not believe that God will call you to account for this? And Mengele is made to answer, you have no idea how I wish with all my heart that he strike me down, that he slay me every time I send the child to the gas. But he doesn't. No one came out of the Holocaust looking worse than God. He is compassionate, the theologians used to say. He hates evil, they claimed. Omnipotent, they said. Caring for his chosen people, the liturgy reads, Ha'on ela amo Yisrael be'esh avamilav. He who answers the prayers of his people whenever they turn to him. Not this time. Not 6 million times. Yet although he did not save 6 million of his people, in an extraordinary reversal of roles in history, his people, the ones who did survive, saved him. The rabbis who escaped the infernos spent scant time contemplating, much less bemoaning, what we call the eclipse of God. With 10 trials was Abraham tested, the Mishnah recalls, and he passed them all, Abraham did. Why didn't Abraham ask God all those moral questions about his final trial, the binding of Isaac? Didn't you just promise me a chapter ago that my seed will come through Isaac? What am I now supposed to tell people about divine commitments? Is Isaac guilty of something that merits the death penalty? With respect to Isaac, shall the judge of all the earth not do justice? Abraham, who clearly knows such questions, does not ask them. When you are in love, as Abraham was with God, your love sabotages all such inquiries. Rashi, the great medieval teacher and exegete, said it most clearly. Lo hirher achar midotov mirov ahavato. Because of his great love for God, Abraham was not interested in God's intention and agenda. The rabbi of Tzanz-Kloisenberg, who came out of the camps shaven and shrunk, raged for years about his Holocaust experience, yet skipped nary a beat in his loving worship of his Creator, and embarked almost at once on a successful campaign to build a hospital. The Rebbes of Bobov, Ungvar, Satmar created housing for the poor and provided food programs for the infirm. Like the Rebbe of Majitz, another survivor who composed and sang his way through the 1950s and 60s, they built houses of worship, ritual baths, and educational institutions in numbers unmatched ever in Jewish history. The mighty theological questions emerging from that murky darkness, they found, merely led back to the gates of Auschwitz, and they decided that they just didn't want to go there. Never would they be humiliated again, and never would they permit God such humiliation. And they had confidence that he who commands the dawn to follow the night will represent them fairly when the last witness is gone, that he himself will report on the heroism of the victims and on how in their last moment they sanctified his name. The last witness will join the legions of victims in the celestial palace that is touted as the place where Elijah, in God's presence, will provide the mighty answers, including one that deals with the great absence while 1.5 million Jewish children were being murdered. 2 lines will form in heaven, each of them silent. No one will be asking Elijah a thing. The first line, with Dostoevsky at its guide, might say, Elijah, tell God that we really have no interest in post facto explanations about his great absence. It's just too late for explanations, Elijah. Too much injustice, too much cruelty has been allowed to happen. The notion of an adequate answer to such a horror is itself repulsive. The second line, forming the dialectic, would have Abraham as its guide. It might assert, it was never about us, Elijah. We never saw it and still don't need explanations. It was always about God. We just couldn't bear his vast humiliation, and we did what we could to mitigate it. Blessed be his name forever and ever. And were I the last witness, I would rage against both camps and ask, how dare they remain silent? What self-absorbed luxury were they indulging anyway, when the memory of that time, of those children, is in danger of dissipating? Where is God, I would thunder at Elijah? Is he out there reciting the names of the camps? Belsen, Treblinka, Majdanek, Sobibor? Is he reading the names of the victims? I would pound the table with both hands. Is he weeping? I'm the luckiest guy in this room, because God was with me every step of the way. And every moment in my life has been the greatest Nes Min Hashemayim. When we sing on Friday night and ask the angels to accompany us, next time you sing that, Ki Malocha V'Tzavalach, think about me. Thank you very much.
We're going to light the candles, Mosaic the 6 million Kedoshim. If there are any survivors, please identify yourselves. Okay, we're going to Mrs. Gerda Meinman. Mrs. Dina Fried. Mrs. Korn. Are there any second generation survivors? Second generation, do you want to come up, Bert? Second generation survivors. And from the 1.5 million children, Shmuley, are there any other children? We're going to recite the Kelmel Rachamim, followed by Ani Mamin, and then we're going to daven Ma'ariv and Sfira, and that will conclude our program.
Eil Molei Rachamim Shoichein B'Meroimim Hametzei Menucha Nechoino Al Kanfei HaShechina B'Malois Kedoshim Utehoirim Kezoyar Harukiya Masirim Es Nishmois Shisha Milyonim Kedoshim Shalchu Li'olamom Babur Shekol Ir Shalom Beach Yitain Tzedokom V'yadas Goras Niyishmu Bosom Beganei Yiden Tehaimenu Chasam Lochein Balu Rachamim Yastidei B'Seiser Kinofam Yoilomim V'yetzer Royer B'Tzer Achayim Es Nishmosom Hadoinoi Unachalosom V'yonuchu al Mishkavam B'Shalom V'noimar Amen Ani Ma'amin Be'emuna Sheleima Be'viasa Moshiach Ani Ma'amin Ani Ma'amin באמונה שלמה בביאסה משיח אני מאמין ויף על פי שישמע עם כל זה אחת אלוהי אחת אלוהי בכל יום שיבואי בכל יום שיבואי ויף על פי שישמע עם כל זה אחת אלוהי אחת אלוהי בכל יום שיבואי בכל יום שיבואי.
Just ask the ladies, we're going to daven Ma'ariv.